Hello and welcome to Richmond Kickers Weekly. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who always plays out of pressure.
Always.
His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I always do unless I don't.
Do you do it because Coach David Bulow says that you should?
If I did it the way I'm assuming Coach Bulow asks, I would not be allowed to play anymore. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe he could bring you in as an example of, here's how not to do it, guys.
Yes, I would be the cautionary tale with a big red X through it. And then there'd be somebody else, probably you, with a big green check mark.
I'll be smart enough to just be doing the podcast about
Exactly,
it.
yeah.
All right, so we're here to talk about the Richmond Kickers' home 2-0 win over FC Tucson in USL League One. This happened this past Saturday.
A 2-0 win that I was confident was a 1-0 win.
Yeah, you did it. So we weren't there live. We
No.
couldn't be there live this week. It's the first game I've missed, actually. The first home game I've missed. Maybe the same for you too?
Second one for me, because
Second
the
one
one
for
where
you?
I was out of town for a funeral. This time I was at my wife's graduation.
There you go. So you got good excuses.
I think so.
We didn't get wet. A lot of people got wet watching this game, so salute to them. But yeah, because the Kickers scored a relatively late winner, the 83rd minute from Joe Gallardo, you somehow missed the 96th minute from Mwape.
Well, it's because I think two different people texted me because it is such an exciting goal that they're like, oh my gosh, like Gallardo with the winner in the 83rd or whatever it was. And that is, it's one of those where it's technically correct because if it's the goal that puts them ahead, then it is the winner. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, they won. It was the game winner, 1-0.
So they might have won 10-0 and you wouldn't have known.
Exactly.
I'm making us sound less professional than we are. We did go back and watch this. And
yes.
You have seen and analysed Mwape's 96-minute goal.
This is true.
Well, before we get into the goals...
and I had our resident former pro analyze it with me as well.
Is that right?
Worth, yes.
Can we talk about who that is?
No.
Oh, okay.
They shall remain a mystery.
Excellent. So before we get into the goals, we got some analysis of the goals, which I think are both very interesting and enjoyable in their own ways. I want to just get into just random observations from this game. My first one is I like that we're starting to be able to essentially predict the Kickers' lineup and shape.
Yep.
Right? It's 4-4-2 when defending, 4-3-3 when attacking, and you kind of know at this point that Mwape's going to be on the right, Dennis Chen on the left, Daniel Jackson's going to start up front. You know Joe Gallardo's going to be the attacking midfielder. You know his partner's going to be Maxi Rodriguez deep and Josh Hughes in between.
Yep.
Right? We kind of we know the Kickers team now, which
we do.
Going back only a month or so, we were confused about who these players were and how they were all going to line up.
Yeah, I mean, which is part of that is that it's a new team with a lot of players coming in sort of relatively late into preseason, even at the start of the season. So that's a part of it. But it's also then Coach David Bulow figuring things out and figuring out who fits where.
Players coming back from injury too, right?
Yeah, or not returning, as is the case with Amos. Still out, I think, for... It seems like maybe for the whole season.
I
forgot
forgotten
about
that we saw him in the first game.
Yeah. I feel like that's a long-term injury. So I'm with you. I would say the other thing to add there is, like, as you said, Maxi Rodriguez starting usually with Hughes, but Maxi Rodriguez dropping in. So you're right, it's a 4-3-3, but then at times it's that weird, like, oh, there are 3 center backs? Oh, no, one of those is the holding midfielder.
I mean, it's designed to confuse the opposition and sometimes the viewers.
Yes, and it does work.
Yes.
I would also say that, like, I think this is probably the... I'm surprised I'm saying this, but I think it's true. This is probably the most closely I've watched a team from like week to week. Like I watch Manchester United.
Even including Man United?
Yeah, I think so. But what I mean is like because I'm not really watching them because we don't always talk about them. We don't always spend time talking about them. We're certainly not doing a Man United specific show.
Yeah.
So I don't think I watch them with the level
I have pitched at you several times, but you're not going for it.
Unless you just want to hear me like weep into a microphone and then scream into a microphone.
Yeah, this would have been a bad year for it.
Yeah, exactly. It'd just be an experimental podcast. Taylor, your thoughts, and then I weep for 45 minutes straight. But because I'm watching them like each week with an eye towards the tactics, and because we've been able to talk to David Bulow a little bit, yes, I haven't talked to David Bulow about Manchester United. I think it helps us see things that weren't there the week before, and that's the thing I'm really enjoying. And
Are you saying they weren't there at all, or we didn't see them the week before?
I think probably a combination.
Okay.
For example, one thing I noticed more so this week was, as I said, Maxi Rodriguez drops in between the two center backs, and we've seen them spread wide. That's nothing new.
Yeah.
But this week, what I saw was you kept seeing them sort of get forward with more regularity than I think we've seen in the past.
I'd say more risks taken by the centre backs just in terms of attacking play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have like in the 41st plus 1 or 45th plus 1 minute, like Akwe gets the ball out on the right and he kind of drives forward with it. He's looking for passes. He's not trying to force anything, which to me again says he's been told kind of move the ball forward, get more numbers into the attack if we can. Nothing's on. He plays it back to Rodriguez. Rodriguez plays it wide to Keita. Keita then goes on a run and ends up, I think, can't remember if there's a 1-2 sequence or if he just dribbles in, but eventually gets fouled. It's a free kick near the top of the box. Nothing comes of it, but it's still center backs now starting to get involved in the attack. And one thing we were critical of last week was
yes, I was about to mention this.
Lack of attackers in that final third, lack of bodies in the final third.
And we talked about maybe just too much going through Maxi Rodriguez and everyone deferring to him and giving him the ball. There's a moment in, I think it's the 79th, where you see Maxi Rodriguez, again, between the centre-backs, he's got the ball. He essentially does a 360 of turns with the outside of his foot to throw off a Tucson attacker. But instead of it being all on Maxi Rodriguez, then he gives it to Akwe, and Akwe strides forward. And I think he then sort of breaks the lines with a pass. So we're still using Rodriguez. The Kickers are still using Rodriguez, but they're then also using the centre-backs as attacking weapons. I would also say, because FC Tucson were not coming at the Kickers in terms of a press, they really were standing off and watching them a lot of the time, maybe just trying to hold position and make things hard. It makes sense to get centre-backs forward, get more numbers forward, try and overload them a bit more.
But I think to the sequence that you're talking about as a specific example, Tucson did that, but then they also committed the fatal error of, but then occasionally kind of sending people to mark other players. And
but not everybody, right? It was like it was a bit sort of a drip of a few players, and then you just open up space by doing that, right? I say all or nothing.
Because either you've got to fully commit and put them under pressure, because even in this sequence, they sort of put Maxi Rodriguez under pressure because they think they've got him, but as you said, he kind of does that turn, and now he's taken out that entire pressure, and now you can play it wide. And then I think there's a little bit of paying attention to, like, oh, we'll go mark the fullback, and Akwe won't have anything to do. But because Mwape has come central, it's opened up space, and then basically Mwape makes a run, and Akwe has that line-splitting ball on, and now they can kind of carve open Tucson.
Mwape ends up down the wing with all kinds of space, right, in the 70th minute. But the thing I just want to note is Abubakar Keita getting his first start at centre-back. We've seen him come in at left-back. We've seen him start at left-back. This is his natural position, right? So he gets a whole game at centre-back. I was mostly impressed with what I saw. A little bit of aggression that maybe went a bit too far. He got a yellow card, for example, for coming and tackling at midfield. I also thought maybe he was a little hard done by the referee a couple times. But I think, again, that's part of being an experienced pro, is you manage to make those tackles not look as bad as they are.
But I mean, then you could also swing it around and say he is still a teenager. Maybe he's like trying to, going against grown adults. I mean, he's 19, so I guess he is an adult. But you get what I'm getting at. Maybe you're being a little overly aggressive to just make sure that they're like, hey, I'm a kid.
I'm saying it's all part of being a kid and earning your sort of earning your pro spurs.
I like that.
What I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I'm guessing this is Abubakar Keita's last game for the Kickers before heading to the U20 World Cup, because it starts next week.
Right? I agree with that. I'm making
unless he plays tonight in the US Open Cup.
We'll find out. I'm making this face at you, the squinted eyes, because did you just say you get your pro spurs?
Yes.
Is that what happens when you go professional cowboy?
Yeah.
Pro spurs?
They put spurs on the back of your boot.
Is that a saying in England, or have you just made that up?
I made it up completely.
Okay.
I was kind of hoping no one
thought I'd let it go, and I definitely wasn't going to. One other thing I wanted to mention before we get to the goals.
This is fitting, right? Because the goals came late, so they should come late in the podcast as well.
I believe there's
not the 83rd minute.
I'm pretty sure there's only one goal.
There were 2 goals, Taylor.
I do enjoy that for I think the second game in as many games, David Bulow got to get some juggling in.
Did he? I didn't see this.
72nd minute and 25 seconds, so I guess 73rd minute. Ball
I'm
goes
going to
out
go
of
back and
bounds,
watch this.
and I think he takes it out of the air, keeps it alive, and then my favorite part is to give it back to the player. Like, he really does. He takes it out of the air, he juggles it a couple times, but to give it to the Tucson player, he kicks it a good 25 yards up in the air, but it lands right in the player's hands, so credit to him.
So it's technically on target, but you've killed a few seconds.
Exactly. And so I was like, all right, but I feel like we've seen him juggle on a number of occasions this season.
Is there a chance David Bulow went into coaching just so he could be on the sideline and get the occasional still few touches in a pro game?
100%. Yes, 100%.
All the work he's done on tactics and coaching and stuff, it's all just an excuse to still be close to the action.
Everything we know about him, to me, indicates that that's, like, he has to do that, otherwise there's a chance he might, like, put himself into the game in, like, the 85th minute just to try to get that goal.
Speaking of that goal, let's get to the 83rd minute. It did have the feeling that maybe the Kickers were going to be easily the better team, but didn't quite manage to break Tucson down. I noticed in the build-up to this goal, in the 10 minutes or so before, Kickers had got a bit more direct, like maybe just a few more crosses were going in, for example, and then getting cleared. And then it's Joe Gallardo who makes the great decision with back to goal, 40, 50 yards from goal. The normal thing is just pass it backwards to someone, keep the rotation moving, especially with this Kickers team, this possession-heavy team. The normal thing would be to pass it backwards, keep the possession going. Instead, he takes 3 touches, turns 180, and just goes at FC Tucson and shoots from the top of the box. 1-0 Richmond Kickers.
But and it's worth emphasizing that 40 to 50 yards from goal, as you said, is he has like a Tucson player on his left, Tucson player like slightly, I think, on his left behind him, and then one on his right. And he just does that quick like outside of the foot turn, and he completely cuts all of them out, and none of them them saw it coming. I think one of them maybe falls over or at least takes a minute to get back. But then I think it's also the awareness of Joe Gallardo to once he does that, recognize, oh, there's this huge gap of space. He dribbles into it.
Drive at it, right? If you see the space, drive at it.
But then I think also recognizes, okay, he's driven at it, and this is the important thing, like to have a number 10 who is good on the ball in these tight moments, because I think he drives forward, but if he takes a heavy touch, maybe he baits out the defenders a little bit more than he wants to, because he's able to drive forward at pressure but keep the ball close. I think defenders stay back a little bit. I think they wait for him to get close to them, and I think that's what opens up that space for him to shoot, because it's still a shot from, 25
outside the
out?
box easily.
Yeah. But I think it's still telling to me that he's able to drive and then get that shot off, and only gets pressure late, and I think it's from behind.
Yeah,
there's like
it's one of the guys he had left behind who
Exactly.
then cut him up. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the Tucson player.
He forgives you. I'll do it for him. So I think that like that to me
I'm going to
is...
guess Somersault. How about that?
That's perfect. You know as much as the commentator, and so I think it's a goal in which you could easily say it's like you need a player like this who, in those moments when it doesn't seem like the goal is going to happen, it's a moment of magic. They put in that effort. It's technically brilliant.
That's what Gallardo's
It's
becoming,
a great goal,
right?
exactly.
Is he becoming a name you would go to City Stadium to watch him?
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, he has been. But yes, he also is becoming that even more. But I would also say it is a credit to the Kickers that, again, we see signs of what they're trying to do, because I guess like maybe 30 seconds before this, the Kickers have a throw deep in Tucson territory. It ends up being a cross that gets headed clear. And I think 4 games ago, maybe, the Kickers are all trying to get back into position and make sure they know where they're supposed to be, and they're not as focused on putting Tucson under immediate pressure.
Yeah, there's a bit of counter-pressing here, right?
And here, you had bodies flying in. You had Hughes close like 15 yards. Yeah, that's right. I'm not saying his first name. Josh Hughes. He closes like 15 yards. You have, I think,
Bolduc's in there as well.
over there.
Putting pressure.
And it just, you never let Tucson get comfortable. They don't have the time to really get this ball like fully clear.
Yeah, and I think Akwai gets the eventual sort of poke tackle in to actually pop the ball loose, but it's almost like a jar that Bolduc and Hughes loosened.
Yeah.
But Akwai steps up and actually takes the lid off, and then Joe Gallardo gets to eat the pickles.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. But so I think it's like, it's a moment of magic from Joe Gallardo. It's a brilliant individual goal.
Yeah.
But it also comes about, they are able to reestablish possession because they pressure high up the field and get bodies up there and really commit to it. And I think that's what you have to do.
There you go, 1-0 Richmond Kickers. And there was a second goal in the 96th minute. It's scored by Moape. I want to start with the finish and maybe work backwards.
Sure.
He nutmegs the defender with his left-footed shot as he cuts inside.
Can I answer the question you're about to ask me?
Let me ask it first. Did you mean that nutmeg?
No.
No. Why do you say no?
This is where I showed it to our resident former pro, who's not actually resident, but, whatever. And I was like, is this like a thing where do you think he like pulled the defender in? Was he looking for... He's like, no. Did he see the legs open up? The answer was no. He's just that close to goal, and I think he recognizes that if you can put it on frame, it's probably going to be difficult. He didn't say this. I think that basically Moape gets that ball, but I think he wants to smash it with his left foot. His first touch doesn't really set him up for that, so he has to take another. And then I think he recognizes the defender's closing. I'm just going to hit this as hard as I can. And it ends up going through the defender's legs into the back of the net.
Moape continues to confuse me. I thought of him as this like super left-footed player, and that might be a problem. Then we've seen him have assists and all kinds of stuff with his right foot, a goal I think as well, in recent weeks. This time he comes inside from the right and uses his left in a way that you think might be getting him into trouble, and somehow he ends up nutmegging the player and getting away with it.
I mean, and that's
maybe it's better to be lucky than to be good.
I've heard that. I've heard that said. But yeah, look, you want to trace this one back a little bit?
I do. So Bolduc gets the assist, which is great for Bolduc, who I think had come off the bench. Yeah, there was a bit of a change where Jackson came out for Bolduc about the 75th. Chin went up front. Bolduc was
Chen, I believe you mean.
Chen, as it was on the screen. They misspelled his name on the screen. Yeah, look into that, please, USL Productions. So yeah, Bolduc on the left. But the real substitute that makes this goal is Justin Grove.
This is just name bias.
Okay, so I want to
Of course it's not
this.
name bias.
It's not just name bias, just because we have the same last name.
Because you're an adult and not a 6-year-old, Daryl.
Yes, yeah. Well, somewhere in between. So we saw Justin Grove in the Open Cup, right, against Virginia United, and I don't think he had a huge impact on the game. He replaced Gallardo essentially as the creative midfielder, but you could see that this guy had a lot about him. Lots of nice little touches, a lot of creativity, and I don't know, something bright about him, right? Someone with ideas. So he subs into this game. You can watch this. If you go to the 96th minute, you can watch this happen. You literally watch him sub in, takes up a position on the left, receives a long throw down the left from, I'm going to guess it's Scott Thompson, throwing it from left back. And Justin Grove simultaneously receives the ball, rolls a guy, turns, then cuts back as another guy tries to get him. Then he sort of baits a couple of people in by drawing people in, holds up the ball a bit, then lifts the ball down the line over the head of a defender and Bolduc into the path of Bolduc so that Bolduc can get away. This was an incredible moment from Justin Grove.
Incredible is a strong word.
Okay.
But yes, it was a very good moment. I'll give you that much. Because I think it would be incredible to me if, like, hard comparison here, but like if we saw Leo Messi do this, I feel like we could see the points where he's like, okay, he knows what he's doing here. He's making this decision here. I do feel like there's a little bit of on-the-fly improvisation from Grove.
What's wrong with improv?
In that, well, I guess it's just that it's sort of like, oh, I've done this. Oh, I got to try that. I got to try that. And he plays his way out, which is like technically what you want there, that he's able to do it. I just say it's not quite incredible to me because it felt a little bit like, oh, I'm turning now. Oh, there's a guy there. I'll play down the line. And then it works out. So it's well done. It's all well executed.
Will you grant me this? It's an incredible for your first few touches.
Yes, I'll give you that.
So especially because it looked to me like you're entering the 96th minute when you're 1-0 up. I've seen Wolves do this, put guys in the final few seconds just to get them on the field so they have an appearance.
Yeah.
So really the expectation was he just gets to run on the field and the whistle goes.
Yeah.
But instead he gets to do that and make an impact. I think that's a pretty high bar to clear for only having like 30 seconds on the field.
See, I totally agree with that. I think what I'm realizing is that this is an Elaine Benes breathtaking moment. Like I just describing anything as incredible is like, it's a high bar for me. It's a high bar.
Right.
It's just the word more than anything.
All right.
But I would say it was breathtaking.
We're both I mean, for Tucson defenders, it was.
Well, true.
Okay, so 2-0 Richmond Kickers. By the time you hear this, they may have also played another game.
Yeah.
They're down to North Carolina they're going down to North Carolina in the US Open Cup. I mean that in a travel way, not in a scoreline kind of way. We'll have a review of that game after it's happened.
Secret agent North Carolina over here.
Yeah. One of the USL thing I want to talk about is the proposal for the concussion substitution. I don't know if people saw this week. We'll put a link in the show notes. There's a good ESPN story. USL, which encompasses Championship and League One, and I think the League Two as well. They've put a proposal to IFAB, who are like in charge of the rules. In 2020, they want to have a concussion substitute in USL and essentially be the trial league that sees if this works. Right. I'm very aware that I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to throw it to you to describe what the concussion substitute is.
Sure. I mean, from what their
you bring in a concussed player as a sub.
Perfect. From what their proposal would indicate, it's that if you suspect there's a concussion situation, there's a possibility of a concussion. Right now, obviously, the player has to come off. They have to go through the concussion protocol. Theoretically, they're supposed to, but as recent games have indicated, they don't always do that. Yeah. So this idea would be that basically if you take a player off to do the concussion protocol, you can temporarily put a player on in their place.
Yes.
So you're not necessarily being penalized for actually doing what you're supposed to do
to
make sure that player can or cannot continue. They're looking at making it around a 7 to 10 minute window. That wasn't part of the proposal, but that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, so they deliberately left it with no minute in it. But I saw a Jake Edwards quote where he said, I'm guessing around 10 minutes would be good. And
Jake Edwards being the president of USL.
Yes, and I think he said 15 to 20 would be too long, which I think I agree with. But I mean, whatever they come up with, I think this is a good idea.
Yeah, and so then if the player is fit to continue, then I think they just swap back out. Things continue as they were.
Yeah.
If the player cannot, then I think that does then count against your substitutes.
It does.
Because the issue is that if you have used all of your substitutes, then basically if this injury happens, you can swap the player out. But if the player cannot continue because they did get a concussion, then you basically have to play down a man as you would normally. So
it's not a shortcut for substitutes, which I think is maybe designed to just stop teams using it as a sort of sneaky advantage.
I think it also might be, this is just like me speculating.
Oh yeah, we're in the speculation part of the podcast.
I also wonder if there's a chance that they think it's more likely to get greenlit if you're not actually proposing a fourth substitute in regulation time.
Because then you're pushing the envelope too far, maybe.
I think so. It might just be like, oh no, we just want this one little window. That's easier to grant, I think, and keep an eye on.
I mean, I like this from a USL perspective as well. USL being the league that gets credited with trialling, hopefully successfully trialling this. I like it a lot more than, say, in the past when they allowed 6 substitutes in the USL. I was not so fond of that.
Nope.
I do know USL was also like one of the trial leagues for VAR back in the day as well, right? So it's interesting that USL gets to be the testing ground for some positive changes to soccer.
I'm good with that. I like that as well. I feel like they may have been also one of the testing grounds for a third card. I think it was like a
third card?
Like Serie B, and I think this was many years ago.
Oh, Serie B did those like green cards for like positive play.
Yeah, I think there was one where they experimented with like the indoor blue card thing, where it was like it's a warning, you're not actually disciplined, but like it's a lead up to a thing. Be careful.
USL didn't do that, did they?
No, that might have been pre-USL in one of the other various leagues that existed prior to USL.
One of the other alphabet soup leagues, But yeah, so I like this. I'll put a link in the show notes if people want to read all about it. Once again, Richmond Kickers 1-2-0. We'll have, as we said, a review of the US Open Cup game, whatever happens against North Carolina. The next USL League One game sees the Kickers May 18th away at Greenville Triumph, South Carolina. So Saturday, May 18th. Away again on Wednesday to Orlando City B. And then back at City Stadium for Richmond Kickers, North Texas SC, who look like the best team in the league so far.
Good boy.
On Saturday, June 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Same day as the Champions League final.
Hooray!
So 2 big games that day.
Yeah. Champions League final second for me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the correct ranking. Speaking of rankings, do you know where the Kickers are in the USL League One standings?
Top of the table. No,
they
they're
are not top of the table. North Texas are top with 15 points from 5 games.
Yeah.
That's the most you can get. Second is Tormenta with 14 points from 7 games. Kickers are in third, 11 points from 7 games. Mm-hmm. It's still tight. There's a lot of teams on 8 and 7 points, but Kickers have at least got that 3-point gap between everybody else.
And they don't have to play Lansing anymore.
So, yeah, actually, never good. Again this season.
There we go.
So front-loaded, the Lansing game.
Until playoffs, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, I personally would love a game against Lansing as the proof that this Kickers team has finally got it all figured out, and this press is no problem.
I'd be all right with that.
Maybe an exhibition game. There should be, instead of a Premier League team in the summer, they should play Lansing again.
All right, I'm good with that.
For all the marbles. All right, until then, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk Richmond Kickers with me today on Richmond Kickers Weekly.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Check in later to see how the US Open Cup game went.